exporting Google questionnaires to XLS data. First is you go to the questionnaire or the form, and then we switch to responses on this tab right there. As you can see, there are a lot of summary questions that we could copy and paste. But right now, let's go to Sheets, and this will output the raw data that the form has been able to received from the respondents. Now let's go to File and then select Download and select Microsoft Excel or .xlsx. Once you click it, a download pop-up would be right here, and you can click Show in Folder and then use it for other processing purposes later on. And that's how you extract or download XLS data from Google Forms. Number 2, explain how to replace string data to numerical data for analysis. Once opening Google Forms and exporting it into an XLS file, you could still use the output sheets data to replace strings, such as these, into numerical values from 1 to 10, like 1 to 10. In order to do this, we could do two things. First is you're going to have a formula like this. We're going to individually count each item if it falls into a certain criteria. For example, let's count if and select the range from B2 up to B22, the range of our data, comma, quotation marks, and the criteria or the pattern. We're going to go with the pattern of fair. If it hits, if there's a fair value or a string fair value in this cell, it will be counted. So far, we have counted 4. So that's for fair. Next is good. We can also use the same format by simply changing and very good. Using the same formula but changing the value of the criteria. Now we also have values like such as very poor and poor. We could get those values using the same formula. Be aware though, if you are not using an absolute value or the absolute name of the range, either Google Sheets or Excel will automatically adjust the sheet numbers or the cell numbers. So be careful to adjust the cell numbers as appropriate. Make sure they are absolute values, so we won't have any reference errors. Okay, so this will just continue on. We could copy and paste all the values over here. And it will yield all the string values, making it into numerical values that we could use later on. So that's the manual part. We could also go and select all of our data. So make sure to select all of it and go to, for Google Sheets, go to Data and select Pivot Table. Create a new sheet with our data range. And then from there, we could select the rows of our data as well as the values. Make sure to select the same column or row or type of data that you're going to turn into numerical data. So from there, it will count all of the string values or string data from this column and then automatically turn it into numerical data. But as you can see, we are missing very poor and poor over here because no responses were made using those two values. So Google Sheets did not provide any values for those choices. So that's how you convert string data into numerical values, both from a manual standpoint and an automatic or a much easier standpoint. Third item, show the different mathematical functions that can be done. There are a lot of functions included in Google Sheets and in Google Forms, but there are also functions in Excel that we could use. But for these examples, we're going to use those who are available in Google Sheets. We're going to focus on basic arithmetic, but as well as statistical functions that are available. Let's focus on the mean. There is no mean in Google Sheets because it's under the average function. They are the same. So let's select the data. Okay. And it will show the mean. Okay, suggested autofill. For the median, we're going to type equal sign and median, and then we'll select the value. And for the sum, it's quite easy. Select all the values. One more time. So the sum is the sum of the respondents. So this is their response to this question. So to make things easy, we just drag this onto the last column. And also this onto the last column. And this to the last column. As we can see, the numbers doesn't differentiate much since we only have 5 items and our functions are roughly pretty basic. So let's go ahead here. we have the mean, median, mode, and the standard deviation for each criteria or each value. So that we have here very poor, poor, fair, good, and very good. Now let's get the mean for this answer. So once again, there's no mean in Google Sheets, so we're going to use average. Okay, let's just select and highlight all of the columns that pertains to this answer. To make things easier, we just drag it down. Okay, so we could get all our mean for all our answers. Also, median. Once again, select all of the columns that pertains to that answer. Close it with quotation. And in Google Sheets, they have this autofill. It will fill in the relevant columns with the same formula. So let's try this out. Or you can just press Control Enter or check that mark. So there's our median. Then our mode. Commonly occurring value. Once again, select. Okay. And we're going to autofill. That's our mode. For these questions, we also get the standard deviation. So let's select our sample and go back to our formula. Finish it off with a close bracket, and there you go. Complete the autofill, and we got our standard deviation for our answers for these questions or for these choices. So these are some of the mathematical functions that we could use both in Google and in Excel. Item number 4, show how to compute the average weighted mean. So in this page, we're going to compute the average weighted mean. We have converted string data to numerical values in our last part of the video. We also have used mathematical functions as well. So now we're going to compute for the average weighted mean in Google Sheets. In Google Sheets, we have this nifty function called average and dot weighted. It will automatically load the values and then just select the weights. Okay, we're from very poor is 1, and from very poor is 1, and to very good is 5. So for this question, we got an average of 5.9. So we're going to make sure that all of the columns are populated, and we're going to get our average weighted mean. For the last part of our video, we are going to create a basic presentation and interpretation of our data in a word processor. So we're going to use Google Docs for this example. First of all, let's put our title. So the title of our paper, we're going to use our research title, an analysis on how teachers rapidly prepare for distance learning in primary level in Rayong, Thailand. Make sure we format this to acceptable title format. For this example, we are not going to be overly cautious, but for legibility, we're going to use a more visible letter type format. Now let's go on to our data representation. We're going to use charts for this example. So to interpret our data, we're going to either use the functions that we have our values done in, or we could also use these values for other purposes. For this example, we're going to use raw values. First of all, we're going to make a chart. So a simple bar chart for this value. Once we have our chart in our page, you could click and link chart option, open our source, and this will open another tab, a Google Sheet tab, which has our data. We could change our data over here, which will reflect on our bar chart. So we could use this data, availability of content, development hardware such as desktop. Okay, let's just use this. Okay, let's copy it in. Let's double click on our chart. We could simply paste our title. Let's make font size smaller so it could fit. And let's change the context. Preparedness in terms of availability, or the availability of content development hardware such as desktop or laptop computer. Now we're also going to include our responses from very poor, fair, good, and very good. Our data will reflect on our chart. Let's put them in. So there you go. Okay, so our data has been migrated into a chart, which is reflected here. Okay, so let's try to rename the title. Once we click update, it will automatically fetch the data and put it on our chart. Let's format this to a normal text and then put our necessary labels. This is figure 1. And let's put a note here. Let's say 9 out of 21 respondents say that they have a very good level of preparedness in terms of having the necessary equipment for content development. You could also put our interpretation over here to conclude our basic presentation. So that's how we could make a presentation of our data in Google Sheets and in using Google Documents. We could also use this in Microsoft Word by downloading it as docx or Microsoft Word format. Just click that and a file in Microsoft Word readable format will be given to you, ready for download and ready for your formatting if you prefer Microsoft Word. So thank you.